Bryan Eustis. I was a fellow in 2000. I'd rather just meet everybody else, actually. But I was a fellow in 2011 to 2012, so just not this year's fellows, but the year before. I was in Nano, Malawi with Partners in Health. Where are the Partners in Health, Nano, Malawi? That's one, sweet. Peter's the other bit. Peter, what's up? How's it going? Can we talk later? I would love to chat. Cool. I am now still with Partners in Health. At the time doing my fellowship, I was working as a procurement and logistics supply chain fellow, and now I do strategic operations with the clinical program team. And is there something else?
Yeah, no, that's perfect.
That's it, thanks.
Hi everyone. Oh yeah, clap for him. That's so good. That's so good. I'm Bertha, Pham, and I was in the inaugural class, so I guess that makes me 2009, 2010, officially old. And I was a health fellow liaison at Covenant House, Newark. Covenant House? Yay. All right. And it was a wonderful year. And currently, I'm working on finishing my last year of medical school at Harvard.
So my name is Adanna, Chukwuma. I was, oh God. Oh no. I was the International 2012-2013 Health Policy Fellow in the City of Newark, the Department of Child and Family Wellbeing. I'll be starting a PhD in health systems in Harvard School of Public Health in August.
My name is Peterson. I was with Bertha in the inaugural class, 2009, making us old. I worked in Tanzania. I worked with the Clinton Foundation in Tanzania, and we worked on medical health information systems there. So I actually forget our title, but yeah, that's what we did for the year. And then now I work at Etsy.com. For those of you guys don't know, it's basically a website for people who have small businesses around the world that make primarily handmade goods, and they can sell to a global marketplace of buyers.
Thank you, guys. So the purpose of this panel is really to paint a picture for all of you of, what to expect in a year. There are a lot of different components of this fellowship. There's the co-fellow relationship. There's just general living experiences, placements, relationships with supervisors. First, I want to do sort of some overarching questions and then some more specific questions to the different experiences that each one of you had. So I want to start out with sort of a big, broad question, but what is the thing that you are most proud that you accomplished in your year as a fellow? And any one of you.
I think because I'm the youngest, I still remember what it is that I did. Okay, so I'm torn between sort of the work that I did and the thing that came out of an opportunity I was given, so I'll speak about both. I think the thing that I'm most proud of was writing up the Let's Move reports, and the reason why is, first of all, it's obesity. It's something that's very important to the city, dealing with childhood obesity, and to the country. It's a national campaign launched by Michelle Obama to reduce childhood obesity in the US. So just the fact that it was something that was a priority to the city, to the country, is something that, really I'm very happy about. But also because when my boss dumped that thing on my desk, she didn't expect a report. That's the sense that I got. I think she sensed that maybe at the end of it, this would end up on her desk somewhere gathering dust. And then I worked on it, showed it to her, and it got to the deputy mayor, and suddenly 3 of us and my co-fellow were sitting around her desk, and it had taken flight, and it had become this report that would eventually be presented by the mayor in the Partnership of Healthier America in the White House. So just seeing how, committing myself to be diligent at something made it become something that mattered to the city and could help them direct their work. I've been asked to consult on the next report, but to the next fellows, I've turned down that offer. You can take it on. So, that's one. The second, I think, was, and I'll speak about that later, was speaking in the Social Innovation Summit. Just being able to advocate, that early in my fellowship. I met Ziv Klein in the Chelsea Peers event, so I'll speak about that later. I just met him, so he said, I'll talk to Barbara about this. Are you game? And I'm like, I'm game, but I thought, he was joking. And then, look at me, I just came into the country, and 3 months, 4 months later, I'm standing on this, stage and talking to CEOs, talking to people, CSR accounts in billions, that people who have the potential to potentially invest in global health on such a large scale. I think that was, the way I'm speaking, obviously, it seems it crowns even the Let's Move experience. I think that was just the best experience, yes.
So it's an interesting question because I think it changes over time. And I think that there's like a couple of stories that I tell people about my experience when I was there that like keep coming up. And like one of the stories was we worked with the health staff in a particularly hard and poorly like human resource funded area of Tanzania, and this is where the Clinton Foundation was doing most of their work in the first place. And a lot of the folks that we worked with were just kind of generally like beat down on the kind of the challenges that they were facing all the time, right? Like you read these books, Mountains Beyond Mountains, like the concept that there's always these challenges that you're facing regardless of how many you get through. And I think we were driving back one time after doing some health visits out to a couple of the health dispensaries where we were checking on like medical stockouts of gas specifically to run refrigerators to give children to give them shots, and they were just running out of gas in different places because they weren't doing a really good job managing how the gas was getting out to different places. And so we were in this car like driving back with all the leaders of the district health staff, and I was talking about, like, this seems like a really easy problem to solve. Like, this is great. Like, we just need to figure out how to get gas out to these various places. And I'd been with this team for about 8 months at this point, and one of the older men on the staff, he's like, I don't know, probably a 50-year-old man. He kind of looked at me and was like, "When are you gonna get that? Like, this stuff doesn't change like that. Like, we just." Like, he laughed. He like literally laughed out loud. He was like, "Ha ha ha! Like, you're so cute that you want to change these things." And I think like a lot of what our training was before we even got in, like around these 2 weeks that you guys are here, was talking about like cultural sensitivities and going in and like really making sure that like we're being sensitive to not trying to impose some sort of cultural will on the people that are there. But this was like a defining point when I was there, when I was like, this is not okay for you to have that attitude. Like I'm not gonna allow this to go in the course of the work that I'm doing here. And even if it's like sort of anti-cultural to be sort of going against that thing, that I was like, this is something that I feel strongly about. And so I stopped there. I was like, look, like if you don't think we can change this, you're in charge of it. Then of course it's not going to change, right? Like it's your responsibility to make sure that this gas gets out to these people, and like this means that children are not getting vaccinated. Like if you don't think it can change, it can't, but it can. And if you think it can, like that's the starting point. And I mean, you're a 20-something kid talking to a 50-year-old man who's been doing this for a long time, and you're not from there, and you're not part of the culture. It's a really hard thing to speak up in those situations. But that's something that like I am both proud of like doing, but then also like the sort of response to that and the response from the group that we worked with, I was really proud of, because everybody just, you noticed that there was this like the rest of the people in the car, they were all kind of like laughing with him initially when they were like, oh yeah, like nothing changes. And then like literally like a month later or like a couple months later, you saw other people like stepping up and saying like, no, we can change this also. Like this is something that we can change, and we have to believe that it can change. So it's it's kind of a smaller story, but it's more of like, yeah, you know, we worked with bigger teams, we got some results, like we're able to sort of talk about those results at the time, but the thing that I remember like 4 years later is like little stories like that about seeing people's thinking change.
So the thing that I'm most proud of from my fellowship year is actually born from one of the central tensions of my fellowship year, which actually carried on from training throughout the entirety of my tenure, which was that, like Andrew said, our orientation that first year was tremendous, and the vernacular was built around building a movement, rightly so, and capacity building. And basically, I think we all entered our placements with really big ambitions for kind of strategic planning that each of us would do and bring our talents to. What I found when I got to Covenant House is that I was essentially, they were in need of a staff member who was working kind of on the ground directly with each youth, because that was just a lack. They were just feeling a lack for a number of years for a person like that. And so I found that I was doing direct service, which of course I'm going into pediatrics, and it felt right to me, but I felt the whole year that I should have been thinking kind of on a larger scale. But from that, what I'm most proud of was the time that I actually carved out to get to know each of our youths. Some stayed for the whole time I was there, and some were there for a week. But for me, it was a way to show them that they mattered to someone, and I remember each and every one of them, and I wish them well. Unfortunately, we can't be Facebook friends, but that is what I think mattered most out of any impact that I could have had. Yeah.
I think what I'm most proud of, I guess I'm very lucky to be one of the fellows that carried on with the organization in which I was a fellow with, and so I get to return often to, not that often, but enough that to the community in which I worked, and so to be able to go back and see people that I just have strong relationships with, to me, kind of in similar vein to Bertha and the children, but just my colleagues and coworkers and the relationships I build, I'm really proud of those. I guess I'll say that.
Awesome, thank you guys. Well, on the flip side of successes, they're also, met with challenges. So I'd love if you guys could each talk about a challenge you encountered, either in the workplace or in the living environment, whatever challenge you want to choose from your fellowship year.
All right, I guess I'll go with that too. So I think for me, so one of the roles I was really focused on is working on trying to support the Ministry of Health and the local procurement and logistics team to keep the health facilities in the district stocked with medicine, which on the surface is just a really straightforward thing, just like keep medicine on the shelves. But it's really hard, and it's really, really difficult. And I think one commodity in particular is HIV test kits. And for my Malawian fellows in here, recently the government released sort of a memo just saying that it's just become a huge, huge problem, and they're just disappearing for many different reasons. But it just leaks throughout the country. It's systematic. And things like that in particular, I think, were just exhausting. It's one of those things that, it'll keep you up at night, because essentially you'll think about, on Friday you'll get a call about a stock out at a hospital where there's no HIV test kits, and you'll just think about, an HIV positive pregnant mother that's traveling to that health facility tomorrow, shows up, there's not a test, travels long distance, so goes back home, doesn't feel like going all the way back there to see that there's not a test there again, and delivers that child, and that's a transmission that could have been avoided. And that stuff will spook you out and keep you up, and just really, really it's a huge challenge, and it's tough. I was supposed to say just a challenge, right? Yeah. That's probably the one.
We can just go down the line. Okay. So in speaking with Heather briefly before this panel, I'm going to opt to be real, and that's one of the biggest challenges for me was figuring out compatible work style with my co-fellow, who to this day is a friend, and we got to see each other through a lot of personal life changes. But I think I realized early on in my year that I didn't realize this before, I don't know why, I'm pretty domineering, and I didn't realize how opinionated or willed I was until I was working side by side with my co-fellow, and she brought a lot of really important talents to the table, but it took at least 6 months to kind of work things out and to kind of work our frustrations out and voice them to each other in a way that didn't kind of get personal. And again, I respect her fully, and we're friends. But I think what would have been ideal was if we had synergy. What we figured out was that just in order to have our work be in the vector of service to our youths, we actually divided and conquered. And that just seemed to be kind of the tactic that we took. Could there have been a better way? Probably. But yeah.
Okay. So going into Newark, and my job title is Health Policy Fellow. So I expected to face off more with council people and policy people in the mayor's office. Unfortunately, a few of them had left just before we got in. We were supposed to work in the Department of Child and Family Wellbeing, but I felt we were going to work a lot more with the mayor's office than we worked. I did get the opportunities to work with them, but So I think the first few months, and there's this session in Q1 called the first 90 days. So I hope they have moved that thing up. Yes. Because I think because I want to talk about what I did about it. One of the things I did was, when I came in, and the first few weeks, I talked with my co-fellow, and just going over how a bit disappointed we were about it. I think staying open and now discovering what space I was in and what room I had to get involved in the change I wanted to get involved in set the tone for the rest of my year. So I found out I could not maybe work directly with the mayor or council people, but that my boss was the go-to person for health planning, evaluation, for city partnerships, for compliance for the greater Newark area, in the biggest health department in the whole state of New Jersey. And when I reframed my job within this space, I found that there was so much to do, and I got a lot done. So I don't want to leave you with my job description fell apart. Something happened, and I'm leaving this year feeling immensely fulfilled, excited about the new fellows, and having discussions with some people, homeless, my friend, I call him my friend now, Greg, in the Homeless Commission, about them getting involved in his work, and the outreach team about them getting involved, and looking for channels for them to get more involved gradually over policy. I feel like my role, among all the different roles, has the greatest potential to evolve, and that over the years, we're going to see fellows working directly with council people if we get our acts, right.
So I'll just say, generally with our year, I think that, and probably every year, this is probably true, the biggest challenges that you guys are going to face are people challenges. Whether it's the people you're working with, like the co-fellows that you have, or the people that are in your organization, or the people that you're trying to help, or any of that, right? People issues are always the hardest stuff to work on. I had a sort of a similar experience to what Bertha had, in the sense that just had some challenges with the partner that I worked with. We are really close, and everybody that was in our class knew how close we were, and we were always close. But you're living together, you're working together, you're spending all this time together, and you can be really close friends and still have a ton of stuff that are really big challenges that you have within those multiple layers of relationships that you have with the fellow that you're with. I'll give an explicit example. So one of the things that was hard, I think, like, different than Bertha, she went in, she felt that she was very domineering, and she like learned that when she was going in. I think like I went in and was almost too sensitive to like, okay, we're just going to split everything is going to be totally equal, and we're not equal, right? Like you and your partner bring totally different skills to the table, and the thing that Good Luck, my partner's name was Good Luck, which is awesome. But the thing that Good Luck and I failed to do is that we failed to both be able to recognize the different skill sets that we did have, and we failed to sort of distribute the leadership roles between the two of us to be able to take advantage of those. So like it was 6 months in, we were giving a presentation to the Clinton Foundation, and like the whole country team got together, and we were giving a presentation about what we had done for the previous 6 months. And so we were putting together, like, we were going to put together PowerPoint slides, and we were like going to put that all together. And I sort of sat down with him a couple of weeks before and was like, okay, like, let's divvy up this work. Like, what do you want to present on? Do you want to present? And it's like, yeah, sure. Like, and I think that he was kind of saying like, yeah, like, I feel like I have to present, right? Like, that's like one of the responsibilities of doing this stuff together. I was like, okay, well, like, you take these slides, I'll take these slides, like, we'll do this. I had years of experience putting together presentations and giving presentations to people, and he had very, very little, right? And especially in the context of doing it to like folks that work in the Clinton Foundation. I don't know how else to put that, but and so like, you know, we came time to actually present, and like, you know, I had my sort of piece together, and was able to sort of present that piece, and like he just totally did not have his shit together, and went up, and like it was kind of a total disaster for us, for both of us. And it was something where like I was trying to work with him as we were approaching this, of saying like, do you need help? Like, can I help you with this stuff? Can we put this stuff together? And like it's probably like one of the most professionally embarrassing moments of my life. And you know, I was angry at first, but then just like kind of embarrassed, right? And then this is 6 months in, so Good Luck and I got along really well, so we ended up sitting down and like having a very explicit talk about saying like, look, you're really good at this shit. I'm not good at that. Like, I'm really good at this stuff, and like, you're not good at that. Let's just stop like trying to pussyfoot around this stuff and just say like, these are things that we are, that like we can actually become leaders at. And this is one of the amazing things that I saw sort of transpire as a result of that, is like he got an opportunity to really become that leader within the context of our working relationship, and he blossomed. Like, he got, like, the thing that he's amazing with people, and he's amazing with Tanzanians specifically. So I was like, all of the people that we work with, like, I want you to take the lead on like just developing the relationships with those people, like, and I'll do all sort of like the research or the analytical side of the work that we're doing, but like, you'll be like the relationship manager basically. And so like, again, people issues are going to be the challenges that you guys all face, but like, if you're not getting along with your fellow, it doesn't work. And it took us 6 months to get to the point where we could have that conversation. But like, I know that you guys are having some structured time at the training now to be able to sit down and talk with your fellow. But I would really encourage you guys to sit down and be really honest about like, look, and we're all accomplished, confident people here, but like, be explicit. Say like, I'm really good at this stuff, and I want to learn these other things that I'm not necessarily great at, right? And then these are things that I'm not good at. And if you can have those kind of conversations now, whether or not it's like, I'm really quiet, I don't express my feelings a ton, like sometimes I get passive aggressive, sometimes like I need food when it's late in the day, and like any of those things, like they sound silly, but those are the little things that like add up throughout the year, where you're like, oh, that person made that crappy comment to me like yesterday, and like those things can wear on you if you don't get on top of that. So, yeah.
Thank you guys for sharing. We're trying to paint an honest picture, you know, so that you understand that with the accomplishments also come the challenges. So thank you for your anecdotes. So the next question is more about GHC and how this experience influenced your life, both philosophically and your perspectives on aid and development in global health, but also your career trajectory.
So I think so for me it's not really an overstatement to say that GHC, it changed my life in a really profound way. I had been working for about 9 years in the private for-profit sector, working with local and state governments, doing emergency response and emergency planning. And I'd always wanted to do global health. I'd always wanted to get into international public health. I actually had went to do a master's in public health and had signed up to do international health, and then started studying EPI and was like, man, EPI's cool. So I just switched to that, thinking, I'll just get back to international health at some point. And just like years went on, and I never did. And at a certain point, for me, I didn't want to just kind of jump into something that I didn't feel comfortable with. And GHC, I sort of heard about it from a fellow, and just learned that you know ahead of time. I mean, I think a lot of you had the same experience, right? You read the job description, you saw the organizations you could partner with, you knew for a fact whether you would have anything to add value to, if you actually could do the job or not, if you felt like you would be helpful or of service. So for me, it was like the perfect opportunity. It was the moment I had been waiting for to actually do a career transition. And sort of you asked about what we're proud of, and I think for me, one of the things I'm also very proud of is in the interview process at GHC, I said, I hope to do this fellowship and then go back to my company and do like international emergency response, but instead of being domestically, I'll be like international, And really, I'm really proud about the fact that I've met people along the way that have really inspired me to stay in this work. It's hard work. I mean, I think you all have probably been doing it for a long time and know how hard it is. And for those that are jumping into it, you'll learn very quickly how challenging it can be, and it can be exhausting, and it's a long process. And so I'm proud of being able I'm proud of the fact that I've met people along the way that nourish me in a way that I feel like I'm really committed and in this work and here to stay. And so GHC was really the catalyst of that opportunity, and it was just huge.
So, like Bryan, at the time that I applied for this fellowship, I was waiting for a change too in my trajectory. And so I had studied and lived in Tanzania as an undergrad, went into the Peace Corps thinking I was going to work in agriculture and food security policy. Years later, one fateful evening, I think it was rainy, I ran into Barbara. I was approaching my gap year, which I was applying to medical school, and she told me about this incidental new project that she was coming up with. It happened to be a one-year-long fellowship. And for a number of personal reasons, I had a partner who was in the tri-state area. I would always love to go back to Mali or Tanzania, but I was looking to stay at home for those personal reasons. And so when Barbara told me about this fellowship, and I was just perusing the offerings, and I saw the Covenant House posting, I was like, oh my God, like, did they read my mind? Did they just like write this for me? But so I wanted, outside of the personal reasons, I wanted to do social justice medicine at home. And again, to echo Bryan, it changed everything for me. So it reaffirmed my intention of doing pediatrics. And in medical school, I went on to take some courses in trauma and violence prevention, and I'm currently on a child abuse elective at Children's Hospital of Boston. And none of that, I don't think my interest would have ever been kind of bloomed if not for that year. So take advantage of what's ahead, because there's a lot.
Okay. How GHC changed my life? I applied for this fellowship when I was in my master's in global health, and I had just left medical practice, and I had this very difficult conversation with my mother. Are you going to be doing this long term, earning peanuts, or are you going back to practice as a doctor? And I was talking to her about my decision to study for a PhD, and we decided, okay, don't apply for a PhD in Oxford. Take 1 year out, work somewhere, and I'd gotten a job with my Minister of State for Health, and then I had the GHC fellowship, and I had, I think, 4 days to decide, and I said, okay. I looked at the fellowship experience, the fact that we're going to be working on the front lines of global health, and then you're growing as a leader and as a person, and you understand of global health issues, and then you're becoming part of this big community and helping everyone else grow. And I just thought it would be a unique experience, and so, I jumped in. How has GHC changed me? I think spending this 1 year working in work, and then all the different experiences and workshops we've had, where we've really spent a lot of time just thinking deeply about health disadvantage, have just informed my decision to continue on this path, and to have another conversation with my mother and say, yes, this is what I'm going to do. That's the first thing. And I think the second thing is just my understanding of leadership. I think hitherto has just been this top-down thing. I've always seen, sort of the impact I would have on the long term in global health as being through maybe some big leadership position as a minister or something. But I think discovering and understanding how disadvantage is about power, and how in the end organizing communities has so much potential to deal with this problem. I think that idea in itself will radically change how I address global health issues, whatever space I work in the years to come.
So one of the things, like when I was leaving undergrad, that I was particularly upset about, I guess, was how many of my friends I knew that they'd studied something like, like global cultural values or cultural race and ethnicity studies, and then they left and went and worked for McKinsey, or they went to a bank, or they sort of like followed the money, right? And in some ways you could say that I did the same. I went to work for Google, and Google was a smaller company at that point. I mean, there were 3,000 people there, and there's 30,000 now. So it's a bit different of an experience. But like, I think one of the things that GHC really aims to do is to give people that are coming out of school another opportunity, like some different types of opportunity, right? Like young people, like a different type of opportunity to be investing in something that, has more impact or more meaning on like solving the world's problems and real people's problems. And my experience in Tanzania with Chai, like I didn't continue working in the healthcare field, but I got exposed to a lot of you get exposed to the fact that there's a lot of people around the world that don't have the opportunities that we have here. Especially, like, you'll find particularly motivated people in these places, and my heart just broke for all of these people, where I was like, if I was in the U.S. and I have a ton of motivation to work really hard, like, you can go use that motivation, and you can find something to do, and like they just didn't. So that's sort of ultimately what brought me to Etsy specifically, because it allows people that do have that motivation and they do want they do want to pursue sort of a business that they have to sell things to people around the world. Like that's sort of the vision of that group. But I think the bigger thing that has kept and stayed with me since my experience is just that, like, I will never choose another job based on money. Like, what I plan to do with my life, and I was lecturing my brother about this last week, actually. He's older than me. He has kids and a family, and he's been a lawyer now for, 6 years. And he kind of hates his job, and he's working for like kind of terrible people, and he's just like such a bright person that has a really great heart and like really cares about the value of the work that he's doing. So it's really affecting him. And I just said, Matt, like, you have this like amazing background, this amazing pedigree of like schools and names and brands, and you have an incredible amount of energy, and you have an incredible amount of heart to give to whatever it is that you're doing. So why waste it? Like, why waste it on something you don't care about, that you don't care about working on? And like, you know, I don't know the background of where you guys all come from, but like, you will learn that this year, like the value of working on something that you really, really deeply care about, and like that's the thing that I hope that you guys sort of carry on from here.
Thank you. And I want to echo that too. As a fellow and also as a current staff member, it's really wonderful and fulfilling to wake up every day feeling like you're going to the right place and the place you're supposed to be. And that feeling is irreplaceable and will keep you going, and that's something that's really valuable. So on to more tangible topics. I'd love to talk, and specifically to Bertha and Bryan, but the rest of you guys can chime in too. Sort of, they're about to embark, you know, and leave Yale to go to their placements, and so we're going to be talking about the first 90 days that Adanna mentioned next week. But how did you sort of orient yourself when you first got there? How did you figure out, you know, your relationship with your supervisor and the community, and how the organization that you're placed with works, and how did you become a part of the organization?
How did I orientate myself? So I arrived, so for the NANO fellows, and Peter, maybe you can chat about it. Have you been to NANO before? You know the place, but have you been there? so that's NANO's. It's a bit removed from the main road. So you basically go about 4 hours south from the Capitol in the long way, and you kind of go up a mountain in a couple hours, and it's just a ways away. And it's definitely different. And I definitely felt a sort of a arrival of, oh man, all right, this is cool. I'll have to figure this out. And I definitely still haven't figured it out, which is actually part of the cool part, I think. But one thing I'll say is I actually really benefited from my co-fellow, from other people in terms of that orientation process. A little shout out to Ian Mountjoy over there. Ian, could you stand up in the back and be okay? All right, cool. For those of you who don't know, so Ian was a year one fellow, and he works in a similar field that I do with Partners in Health, and so he actually had come out while I was there, and we had worked together, and he had helped orientate me to a lot of the different things going on. Shout out to Amanda Schwartz back there. Amanda, she had come out and also orientated me. Kelvin Kampambali, my co-fellow, orientated me every day for many months. And so for me, that was sort of the onboarding process. For the real specifics, I was fortunate to work for a larger organization, so they were really accustomed to onboarding new fellows. There was a little bit of that weirdness where I think the boss or the program manager that had interviewed me had left, and so there was a new one, and some of you guys might find this, and so they kind of wanted to have a meeting with me and say, well, like, so who are you and what do you do? And I'm like, what are you talking? I'm the GHC fellow. Like, Kelvin and I are here to like help with procurement, supply, and so it took a little while to sort of orientate, but they had set up a really established program where we'd meet with the program managers of every different department within the organization. We'd meet with some of the Ministry of Health officials and just really get to know everybody, and that was huge. I will say, my co-fellows with other organizations, that was not the case for many of them, and you guys will find that to be true as well. You'll get there and there won't be a very deliberate or maybe specific orientation process, and maybe they're not exactly sure what skill sets, even though they had your resume and you had interviews, really what you're going to be doing. And so I would just recommend to give it time because that irons out so quickly. A lot of fellows in my experience say that for the first couple months they're kind of wondering they don't feel like they have enough work. They're kind of like all geared up and jacked up coming out of training to do some cool stuff, and then they're like, what's going on, like, when are we going to kick off? And then for the next, like, 10 months, there's not enough hours in the day. There really isn't. So it's that patience that a lot of us are really bad at. But I think for those of you, I'll just put this out there, that are joining smaller organizations that are kind of not as accustomed to onboarding volunteers and fellows and new staff, to try to give it time and to really lean on your co-fellow and your partner to help you with some of the relationship building and figuring out your surroundings.
So I couldn't agree more. And from the perspective of a U.S. fellow having done a U.S. fellowship, it's kind of the same. So I approached the first few months of the fellowship as I did Peace Corps, which was, I'm going to sound like such a slug. 2 things. 1, show up every day on time. 2, keep data. So what do I mean by that? If you're not in the habit of journaling, it's fine. But what I've found to be most helpful, both for Peace Corps and for Covenant House, was I would show up every day on time, stay the whole day clearly, take in as much as I could in those first month or month and a half, and then I'd keep a running list of 5 things. What do they need? What do they need? What do they need? What do I want to do? And what can I do? 4 and 5 are like interchangeable, and especially coming out of GHC orientation and training, you feel like you can and want to do everything, and you can and will at some point. But yeah, I just approached orientation as just kind of a needs assessment, which is necessary and increases your buy-in and increases their buy-in into you, and encourages them to invest in you as someone who will be with them and a partner for a year and onwards.
How long did it take you to sort of on board, and how long did it take you to sort of get your feet under you, from the day you arrived until you started getting in your group a little bit, and like you could actually do things and feel confident?
Totally. I still feel like I'm onboarding, but I felt like I was useless for like the first 6 months, honestly. Like, it's just so complex. There's so many new things, and it's, there's so much going on, and the orientation process was specifically, I think, a week that I met with everyone, and then from there, you're kind of like, I was given sort of a small project to start with, and that was really helpful for me. It was just like, try to do this, like very clear X, and so that, once I finished that, I was like, all right, well, what's next, but throughout the year, like, there's so many elements that I just felt like I was still learning. Like Kelvin, my co-fellow, we would chat all the time about, like, why is this happening and what's going on over here, and I don't feel like I ever felt like I got this, I'm good, like, let's run, It was definitely a sense that, things got more clear, and with that, it actually got more challenging, right? Like, when you, like, for the first 6 months, you can be like, I don't know what's going on, so, like, that's why I'm suck at my job, But I think after you kind of know what's happening, then you're kind of like, shit, well, I need to, like, do something, right? Like, or I need to, like, we have to figure, like, how to, like, start implementing, some type of intervention or whatever it may be. So it's challenging, and I think it'll be maybe quicker or longer for others, but I think it'll always be a process.
I agree, and I think it's the length of time it takes to kind of habituate is also proportional to, again, what's needed. I happen to kind of slip into my co-fellow and I happened to slip into these empty job positions, and there was like there are these task lists that other staff had created for us. So for us, it just didn't happen to be that long because we just had to get going. But in terms of the second phase, which is the implementation, strategic kind of thing, I actually, honestly, never got to that in my year, just because there was so much turnover at the shelter. So I came back the summer after my first year of med school, just to do that piece. So again, it's a continuum, but you just try your best.
I also think, don't be afraid of how long it's going to take. I mean, the very best jobs are the ones that are the hardest ones to figure out, right? Like, if you could figure it out in 2 weeks, you're going to be bored. Seriously. Like, you will be absolutely bored. So, if it takes 6 months, if it takes a whole year, like, that means you've learned a ton.
On that note, having studied cultural anthropology in school, I sort of decided to do my onboarding like an anthropologist and like really actually dedicate the first 2 to 3 months to like doing interviews with the community health workers and patients and like following people around, and like just had a general air of openness and like really I'm a student here to learn until I have an idea of what's going on and then figure out how I can play a supportive role. And it took a couple months to sort of begin to understand, you know, the things that are left unsaid. And that it continues to be an evolving process. But also, like, just because you're constantly learning doesn't mean that you can't contribute great things also. Awesome. So moving along to relationship building, which I think Bryan and Andrew both talked about, and I'd love to elaborate a little more with the two of them. I know you both had really special relationships with your co-fellows, and relationships, like you guys said, take a lot of work and intentionality in fostering and building those relationships. And it would be great to hear a little bit about how you worked on that.
Yeah, so my co-fellow and I had a great relationship. Kelvin was amazing. He was a partner, a colleague, a friend. He was my Chichewa teacher, so he taught me just really helpful phrases like Wabaya Bo and Wampa Lucy and Wachena Kwambiri, and I just really learned how to you know, make sure that I was connecting on deep emotional level. No, Kelvin was just such a good friend. I actually, unfortunately, had a problem where, similar to what Bertha described, there was essentially a few months after us arriving, there was 2 staff reductions. So one of the staff reductions was the head of finance for the entire organization, and Kelvin actually had the most financial education and background within the organization, and so they really asked him to step up and run a lot of the financial stuff for Partners in Health in Malawi. And so he just got thrust into this huge role, and I felt totally robbed because now I don't have my co-fellow. And then we had a reduction in sort of the procurement officer for the organization. So we just divided and conquered and split up the roles. So it kind of bummed me out because we didn't actually we would talk about this. You guys will meet at like mid-year with your fellows. You'll do check-ins throughout the year. You'll check in. And we talked about wanting to like collaborate on a couple projects or maybe start to like kind of work on things together, but there was just so much work, and there was just we were short-staffed, and so we never really got to do that. So we kind of just hung out all the time outside of work, and so that was sort of that was sort of the relationship. Unfortunately, it wasn't as much surrounded around the work or the professional.
Go on. Did you have any challenges with like working relationship or any relationship, and how did you resolve them?
It's tough. I don't think, like, for those of you that know Kelvin, he's like the most easygoing, laid back, like, he's like, he's younger than me, but he was like a big brother. He's so thoughtful. He's the kind of guy that's just like, we'll check in on you, just like, hey man, how you doing? Like, I saw you just didn't seem like as happy today. Like, he's so on it. Like, he's such a good, caring person. That there really isn't anything, like we didn't have a fight. Maybe I should start one or something, I don't know. But no, there's not, like now, I was chatting with Ian back there, and I was wondering, like, if you're gonna ask me that question, I was thinking, like, did Kelvin say something about me that I don't know? Like, did we have a fight and I didn't realize it? But no, like, honestly, it was great.
I don't know how all of you guys' placements are set up, so I don't know if you're actually like living in the same house or if the actual work is going to be like literally you split like everything you do. Like Good Luck and I, we lived in the same house. We lived in a very remote part of Tanzania, so we were about 8 hours by bus away from Dar, and so his family and all of his friends were in Dar es Salaam, and we lived in a really, really small town. I think we've lived in like the most remote placement of any GHC fellows ever, and it was just the 2 of us. And it was like the two of us with two other folks that worked for Chai. So we couldn't get away from each other. Like it was like no escape in that sense. So I don't know exactly how intentional our relationship building was, but like if I like I work with a bunch of teams now and I manage a bunch of teams at my job now and like in New York City, and if I were to talk to people there, I'd be like, okay, like there's all these things that you can do. You like go out to dinner with people, you spend time with them outside of work, or like you make time to like socialize, and this is how you do relationship building. Like we fucking lived together, right? Like we did absolutely everything together. So like it would have gone catastrophically bad if we hadn't get along. And it was sort of like a forcing function, I think, that we got along. But like very similar. It sounds like your partner. Like Good Luck was just like the best guy. Like he knew, like I said before, like he was just very socially gifted, and he was the kind of person that could just like. You'd go into a room and he'd be the guy that like everybody's like around because he's telling silly stories about whatever, and so he was really like my guide into being able to have relationships with the rest of the people we work with. But I think the thing that was probably just overall good for us is that we just spent a ton of time talking together about how stuff was going, what we were working on, how we were feeling, what we were having challenges with, whether or not that was with the work or with personal life or any of that stuff. Like that's how you develop friendships, right? Like it's how you develop like relationships with anybody. And it's odd, like I feel like the more that you get to know about someone, about their background, it's just like incredibly hard to not find something that you're connected to that person with, or that you can empathize with them with, whether or not you're like and we would have fights. I mean, like we would have stuff where I would get like really passionately like, we are not doing well now, or like you did not do well at that thing, or I did really crappy at that thing. But it didn't have to be contentious, right? It was something where it's like, when you get to that level of honesty with the person that like you have really close relationships with, that you can just be like, yo, like I'm gonna call you on this thing because you're just like not doing it. That's the best place that you can be in. It takes a while, but.
Okay. So I think I'm the only fellow whose fellow couldn't live with her. I mean, she had to take care of some family issues, so we didn't live together. And the way our work was structured, we handled separate projects, so we didn't really work on anything together. And our perspective when it came to global health issues diverged. So we really didn't, agree on a lot of things. I think we found a way to make it work. We put the work ahead of everything else, and we made sure we did what we had to do. And I think the most helpful thing for me this year as regards my co-fellow relationship was a conversation I had with Perry in my orientation just after I met my co-fellow, and sensed that because of how passionately we felt about our different perspectives, that maybe we wouldn't, cross the working fellow barrier to we become friends thing. And I wanted to understand if I should be comfortable with that. And I think the most helpful thing she said was that I should be fine with that. And I want to encourage you to explore this relationship. This year is about partnerships, and it's a big part of our model, understanding that we'll come with different perspectives, different training, to discover what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, what you can bring, and to discover how to walk across the table from someone who is very passionate about this issue, but sees very differently the way to get there, And I think I have grown immensely in my understanding. And look at me here talking about community and grassroots. I got that from my co-fellow. Yes, so yeah, that's me.
Another type of really important relationship in this fellowship is the relationship you have with your supervisor and the other people in your organization. And so any one of you who wants to sort of elaborate a little bit more on managing that relationship, it's certainly a process, and particularly when you want to jump in right away and like create this relationship right when you get there, and what that looks like, and and how it evolves.
Okay, I think that was something I was really deliberate about. So I got into my office, I saw how, my job space was just this undefined thing. I understood how tied it was to my relationship with my supervisor. So I think getting in, that was the one thing I decided to be very deliberate about it. I came to work very early every day. I left work very late every day because I figured she liked to have those conversations just before and just after work. It was in those times that I was able to define what I could do. I was able to define what was important to her. I had those conversations with her assistant to discover it's more important you turn in a job early than that it's perfect. And that's what helps me, sort of move on to bigger projects when I handled the first one well. So I think time, finding out what time was sort of I could use to get to know her and to just be very deliberate about it. And now, she really trusts me. And I think that's one thing I have learned this year, how to sort of get into an organization, how to understand your supervisor, how to work with your supervisor. And it was time for me, really.
You know that?
I want to hear.
So I loved my supervisor. Okay. Okay, I really love her more now. So I worked directly under a pretty influential person at Covenant House Newark who basically did all the programmatic planning, who kind of came from direct care all the way up into her position. And that being said, she struck fear deep into my heart for the first. She's just like no BS straight shooter, and that scared the crap out of me for the first. But I would say that most important thing with the
Final panelist. Just got here.
Okay, so most important part was the initial period. Again, before kind of getting into what you want to do, what your visions are, there's that buy-in period, reciprocal buy-in. Supervisor has to like you, you have to like supervisor, feel things out. But I would say beyond that, your supervisor is a great vehicle for launching your ideas. And so that list of 5 things that I kind of enumerated, kind of in there, maybe in between what the kids need and what I wanted to do was what supervisor wanted me to do. And I think that those things were built from her expertise, but then you also realize that you are uniquely poised to create your own expertise within your capacity with whomever you're working, and fundamental to that is listening. So you build your expertise through listening, and then you can shoot your ideas straight up to supervisor, and that is like really fulfilling.
Okay, so I want to take a moment to to greet our final panelist, Tinashe, and I'm going to have you introduce yourself, saying the year of your fellowship, your placement, your city you were in, and what you're doing now.
Well, first and foremost, I'm super excited to be here to see all these new fellows. I just am so excited. I know that wasn't part of what you asked me to do, but I'm just excited to see all you guys and all your beaming faces. So my name is Tinashe Maduke, and I was in the class of 2011 to 2012. I was at Covenant House, Newark, New Jersey, as a health fellow or health counselor. And right now, I am currently at Management Sciences for Health in Virginia. I'm working with their Leadership Management and Governance project just for the summer as I complete my Master's of Public Health at Washington University in St. Louis, Missouri. So I'm so happy that I was able to connect and come to see you guys. And I always love this time of the year. So yeah.
Did anyone else want to talk about their supervisor relationship before we continue?
No? Okay.
So I have two questions, and I would definitely want to leave some time for you guys to ask questions, though they'll be around for the rest of the evening. But sort of looking beyond the GHC Fellowship, how have you continued to stay engaged with Global Health Corps and, in various different ways, and how has it continued to sort of be a presence in your life? And any of you can take this.
I think it's really, really easy, and I think all of you are going to find it's really, really easy. The fellows are nuts, like all of them, all of you, I'm sure, are like these maniacal, like ambitious machines. Like, it's awesome. And there's just like a common thread through everybody, right? You're all passionate about something really, really cool. And then beyond that, you end up connecting to other fellows, other alumni, past fellows, people in your organization in which you work, and it's like just a whole cache of amazing people. So it's so easy. It's like you guys like take the time, obviously, like the stock like statements, right? Take the time, get to know people, really, really actually listen to other people. But like you guys are like within this room, there's probably like 10 people that you could be lifelong friends, probably 100, but at least 10 because there's just not enough time. But it's awesome, and it'll be so easy. I don't know.
So I agree in two things. Area events, and this is early for y'all because you're just starting, but when you shoot out the other end, you'll find that it's really easy to connect with like-minded folk and graduates of the GHC program just in your own neighborhood. And those I've done on an ad hoc basis, just depending on what my schedule is, but those are awesome. Two, and this is true now for you, if you stay in contact as friends, you'll stay in contact as colleagues. And so whatever that means, like if you Skype with each other, if you just email each other just to check in, like how are you doing, how are you feeling, that is the beginning of a personal and professional relationship that will carry through, like Bryan said.
I guess I have to speak as a fellow. I haven't left the community. Jen, should I move this on?
So this is my fourth training, I guess, that I've been to, including my own. I missed the second years because I was in Africa still. But yeah, I've come back to every one that we've had. It's somehow like. I tell people at work all the time, like when people get upset about the work that we're doing, I was like, it's a website. Like, don't freak out too much about it. Like, we'll get it done eventually. Like, there are not lives on stake. But the passion that exists in the community and in this group of, again, like working on something that you really value and you really care about, it's like, I can't tell you how good it is to be around that. Like, you don't find that in life very often, and this crew is very unique, I think, in that sense. I'm close personal friends with a bunch of the fellows that I was with, and we only had 22 our year, but so that's like sort of one piece, but this other piece of just like this energy, or like the sort of I don't know, like that, like the cultural essence of this crew is something that's like incredibly refreshing. If you ever leave, like you leave your fellowship year and you ever get like, I don't know, like emotionally down about any of the work that you're doing, like reconnect back with people from GHC because they will like breathe life back into the things that you're passionate about.
Well, for me, I believe in freak phone calls. I'm not a very good person at texting and emailing. A lot of people I just call you and you're in the bathroom or in the train, or I don't know. So for me, I think my best mode of staying engaged is partly that, making surprise phone calls from the blue. Hey, Hez, yeah, I just thought I'd say hi. And it's at times it's those simple things, because when you're talking about relationships, it's the small things that matter. It's that episodic Facebook message. It's that random phone call. It's that response to email. And I think GHC does very well in terms of sending out emails. You know, somebody says, hey guys, I'm doing this research in this place. Does anyone know how you do this? And within like an hour, there are like 4 responses, you know. And I think that email list is a very good tool that, you know, I've seen keeping people connected. And you can ask any question that you want to ask. So for me, I think, you know, Facebook, great. I'm anti-Twitter, sorry, but I'm still working on that. But, you know, Facebook, phone calls, for me is what I use to stay in touch. And then also Barbara and the GHC leadership really do a good job to keep us in the loop on what's happening. So we know everything happening, and because of that, you know, you still feel connected and you still feel like you're still a part of GHC. And I think that's just incredible what the leadership that Barbara and Jen and Tally and Heather and all the guys in the team have done. So, yeah.
So I want to leave time for questions. My last question was, what piece of advice would you give? But maybe you guys can give that to individuals along the way, or speak to it as we're also answering questions. So I wanted to open it up because we don't have too much time left for any questions that you guys have of the alums. Yes.
Hi, my name is Isabel from Malawi. Okay, so my thing is, I'm going to be working where I live in Malawi, and I feel comfort in the sense, my family's there, my dad's just a phone call away, I have relatives and everything. And I was telling some people the other day, I'm really impressed and inspired by all of you who are crazy enough to go halfway across the world to a place you don't know and do a job with strangers. So my question is, what do you do on those days where you feel like, wow, what am I doing in a strange land? That's my question.
So, I mean, Malawi is the warm heart of Africa, so, I think that there's definitely times, I think, fellows that are definitely, fellows that are placed in countries that they're not from, there are times, I think, where you crave creature comforts of home and you get nostalgic. Being in NATO, one thing for Kelsey, for you, is, it's the little things, right? It's just like the extra piece of food that from Trader Joe's that you love, that you brought with you, that you just saved for that moment. Or sometimes you just need to go into the city and just take it easy. The movie theater in Blantyre, I actually caught a film there. I'm not ashamed, by myself one night, just because I just wanted to get out of Nano and just zone out for a bit. That movie theater is awesome too, by the way, whoever's been there. So I mean, I think for me it's just part of the reason why you guys signed up for the fellowship is to have really unique, interesting experiences. And within that, there'll be challenges, I think, that you can cope with through, creature comforts or other things, or talking to friends and leaning on your co-fellows and your colleagues and your friends. But by and large, it's a year fellowship full of such amazing things that I think anytime I thought that I was getting down, I just kind of look around and see what awesome opportunities and exciting stuff is going on, and just try to keep that in mind.
Have the opposite experience, if you wouldn't mind speaking to that. I mean, because there's also the working within your own country and still sometimes feeling like an outsider yourself, because you might be working in a community that you're not familiar with. And I know that you've
Yeah. I have. So I was thinking, that's such a good question, and I was actually thinking about Peace Corps. So I'll just say something really quickly with how I would have answered when I was in Peace Corps. I think honestly, for the first year, there were times when I would be in my hut at night alone, and I would just feel so weird. It was the most eerie feeling of just being alone, but not alone, and the new person. And so I would say I just wrote it out. You just write it out, because it's it's unsettling, but it's such a unique feeling that comes kind of once. It's the first time you'll ever feel that way. So, and then I got a shortwave radio and listened to the BBC my second year, so I was fine. In terms of, in terms of being in Newark, so my big thing was that, you know, I grew up riding my bicycle way deep into the night, into neighbors' yards and all this stuff, and then I was in Newark where I couldn't leave my apartment after it got dark. I did that once and it was awful. But it was, and it was just where I was in the city. I mean, I think maybe it's just the same principle. You just figure out what's appropriate within your means and how you're living, and then just ride it out, because it's such a unique kind of emotional and mental, psychological experiment. And then suddenly you are used to it.
Well, I'll just say something real quick, that like, for those of you who are moving to another country, if you're freaking out right now, like it'd be weird if you weren't, let me put it that way. Like, it would be odd if you're not freaking out about moving to a totally another country with total strangers and working in a totally, like, a new place that you've absolutely never been. Like, that is something that very few people do in their lives, ever. So if you're doing that right now, like, it's okay. Like, it's, like, it's totally gonna be okay. Like, it'll work out, but B, like, don't try to hide from that feeling, if that makes sense. And if, like, we're all gonna be around for the rest of the night, but if you're feeling particularly anxious about leaving your current job or changing career paths or going to a brand new place or being with people you don't know, come talk to us, because we've all been there. And there's definitely some both practical things that I think we could talk about, like, for whatever specific place that you guys are going. But I want to, like, let you off the hook in that sense. Like, allow yourself to be freaked out a little bit, because it's freaky.
Yeah, and the worst feeling is to think you're the only one going through that. And I think for the most part, at least in most places, I think Jen can correct me, there's usually more than two fellows who are in any country coming from, whether it's from the US or if you're in the United States, in Newark, there are other fellows. So usually you're not the only one going through those feelings. You can actually get to chat. I spoke a lot with the other fellows who were in Boston and even in Newark, and we just chat and talk it through. So you always have people you can talk to and just share. Say, man, I miss hearing that drum or whatever it is. But you're never ever alone.
Actually, I wanted to add on to what Andrew said. Even if you've moved places, lived a lot of places before, it's still natural to be scared. And just, the anticipation, and you still need to make new friends. And I remember thinking to myself, God, I have moved to 7 different countries before this, and why am I still feeling anxious? Like, I've done this before, I know this drill. And then recognizing that every experience is a new experience, and you need to, like, start over and build your life all over again each time, and so it's natural to continue to feel that each time you're making a big life change. So don't put a lot of pressure on yourselves. I feel like we automatically come in and we're like, okay, everything needs to be perfect from the very beginning, and I need to start, like, hit the ground running, I need to get there and know everything already and speak the language perfectly, and, like, you have all these expectations for yourself, and we're so hard on ourselves, I think particularly this group. And that's what I love about Still Harbor, is remembering yourself in this whole process, and self-care is such an important part of this entire transition. So anyway, next question.
Can you really briefly speak about what you guys chose to participate in or organize for your public engagement requirements?
Nothing.
It is a new program that
No, that's you. That's you. None of us.
That's what you are talking about.
You're the only one that had it.
Otto is constantly publicly
So, but I did not initiate. I didn't initiate it. After the Social Innovation Summit, I was invited to a number of places independent of GHC to speak for the organization, to recruit. Okay? So I did that. I did not organize it. They did it on their own. They brought me. They even paid for me to come. And I spoke, So, yeah, that's what I did.
Yeah, so it's a public, we now have a requirement, but you guys might have done it without it actually being required. It's just engaging publicly, either speaking in front of a group or writing an op-ed or something that's like
Building the movement.
building the movement, exactly. It is something new that we recently added, recognizing the importance of, bolstering your voices and making sure that you guys are all heard so that there's a broader spectrum of people who are hearing what you have to say. So it is a new,
Okay. So I didn't really do that justice, just because I think since I'm the only one from my class speaking, I think I should speak a bit more. Now, I spoke in many places. Yes, I did. Beside Barbara, the last one was in KKR. Okay? I spoke in a number of places. I wrote some op-eds. A lot of people in my class, Sonya, Soni, Callahan, were on Huffington Post writing about issues they were passionate about maternal and child health, about social justice. So a number of people in my group spoke, wrote, I think James went on this rally, this HIV/AIDS walk, and had a whole team that worked with him in the rain to raise money for HIV. So it was something that we all consciously, especially towards the end of our year, knowing we had to do something, try to, make sure we fulfilled. I don't want to let you live here feeling like this is something that's not important. It's very important. It's something that was a big part of our year. And yes, I did do something, just that it didn't ring a bell.
And our wonderful Anne is amazing at connecting all of you to opportunities. And she is constantly sending out emails, letting you guys know about different newspapers and media and other opportunities, conferences to speak at, and asking, who's interested in speaking at these different things. So we definitely have a lot of support in that. So, yeah.
So sort of a follow-up question to that, since you guys didn't have the requirement, but I assume that you did try to do what they want us to do through the requirement, which is connect to the communities outside specifically your organization and the people you're working with. So I'm wondering how you went about doing that, and if you had difficulty doing that, and how you sort of overcame those difficulties.
But I'm not going to speak just about public engagement. I'm going to talk about GHC. Now, at this point, 5 years into the fellowship, and just with partners engaging with alumni, there is something like, sort of like the GHC brand. There's this idea in people's minds when they hear that you're a fellow. They assume you're intelligent, you're passionate, okay, you bring out-of-box skills, to whatever. And you have to leverage that, because there'll be all these opportunities in networking meetings before everything, in Chelsea Piers, just meet with people that are probably working in the kind of organizations you might want to transition to, And so I think I particularly made good use of that. I've done some work with MDG Health Alliance on demand creation, even talking about, me helping them with the deep dive in Nigeria, doing some work with them on community health workers, did some work with the Earth Institute on their community health worker program. And I just made sure it didn't interfere with my job, but I'm just trying to stress the fact that there are a lot of opportunities created with the networking events to reach out to partners and to begin to just decide, is this something I want to do? Can I get involved, Yes, so that happens, and it happens with a lot of fellows. I did talk with other people, and it happened a lot.
Being the first year, I think one of the only things that we tried to do as a group was write blog posts for the GHC blog. And Ian read a ton. Ian, how many blog posts did you write? Yeah. Yep. How many times did I ask you to do one? I think honestly, like, probably the way that our group invested the most in this was to actually reinvest in GHC explicitly. So one of the things that we were sort of tasked with and that we talked about a bunch in the first couple of years, and I think it still exists now, and I think it's still a way that you can do this, but reinvesting back into how to help GHC get stronger and better as an organization. And if you see things that we're not doing well overall right now and ways that like we can get better, like I think this has been something that we have excelled at as a group. Specifically around how each of you as fellows, like you're still part of something that is relatively new and that is growing and that it's mutating and it's changing and it's getting different, right? And we're a part of a movement overall, but like we have a lot of change and a lot of stuff to work on within our own organization, and the stronger that we can be, the bigger impact that we can have sort of outside of that organization. So I wouldn't necessarily think about this task as something that's like just about doing outreach outside, but I think about it's like how do we put ourselves in a position as an organization to have more influence, and that could be investing internally as well. So.
And for me, I think it's also just maximizing on the opportunities that you find to interact and to network. You know, that we'll always say that because it's very important. For me, when we were doing the orientation, we had the cocktail at Chelsea Piers, and just talking and chatting with different people, different partners who come over. I ended up going with Barbara to DSM. This is a big multi-billion-dollar company based out in New Jersey, and I actually spoke at their World Food Day program, and got to brag about GHC and what marvelous things that we're doing. But that's at times it's as simple as that. The simple conversations that you make in the different networking opportunities that will be generated through GHC, but also through your workplace. If you are working at a partner organization, PIH, and they're doing a conference and you're there, you're interacting with the other NGOs or whoever, other stakeholders, at times it just takes that proactiveness and just engaging and talking about who you are and what drives you. And that always invariably makes you talk about GHC, and that always drives interest, and that can really go far.
I think this was partially answered with that, but I was wondering if there's anything else that you wish at the end of your fellowship when you're trying to figure out what you wanted to do next, if there's anything that you thought, oh wow, I should have started this in the beginning, in order to prepare yourself for figuring out what you want to do next and how to get there.
I honestly have no regrets whatsoever about this fellowship, about my experience. I'm not saying everything worked out the way I wanted it to work out initially, but I have zero regrets, But I will say the one thing that I did well coming into this fellowship was I thought that I was very deliberate about what I wanted, to take from this. So there were some conferences I didn't even apply to go for because I just knew this would be a wonderful experience, meeting everybody, but I wouldn't. But, I came to Yale and I knew I wanted to meet Elizabeth Bradley because I wanted to apply to Yale for my PhD, and she helped me get in. My second networking event, I wanted to get to Johns Hopkins. A Johns Hopkins professor came. I met him, and that helped me with Johns Hopkins. And I can keep going on about how I was I know some people are looking at me like, oh God, is she crazy? I was very deliberate. And so it might not be that deliberate, but I encourage you to think about what the different potential pathways are for you. I want to be involved in non-profit work, maybe at least, at that level. And then begin to look for those opportunities because they will present themselves. The kinds of people that walk into our networking meetings, it's just amazing, So I think thinking about those different pathways and being conscious about that, because you could go for a billion things and live with nothing if you don't.
I really like the comment that Bertha said earlier, where like she went into her year basically thinking like at the very beginning, like how can I help? How can I help? How can I help? Like, those are the first three things that she talked about. I would fight against your urge to plan next year. Like, fight really hard against that, because I think, again, like, all of us are type A achievement people, right? Like, we like to plan and like to be ahead of the game and have a 5-year plan, and that's a question that we ask, right? It's like, what's your 5-year plan? Fight against that, and just like dive into the job that you have at hand, and dive in and just say, like, what can I do to help? And I think it'll come naturally. I mean, this is like something with like your career in 15 years, like, you'll just know that this stuff, you don't plan every year, like, it just happens.
And I also want to say, before I go to the next question, that sometimes planning makes you forget that there are a lot of other paths that you might be passing because you have this goal that you have in mind and you don't realize that there are all of these other opportunities. I've definitely seen people miss opportunities because they think they want something and then they miss out on other things. So.
My name is Lorraine Kabunga. I'm from Uganda. My question, yes? Oh, I'm going to be a Clinton help? Yeah. My question is for actually all of you, wherever you are. For those of you who are in Africa, I imagine your perspective about Africa has somewhat changed. And if it has, how has it? And like, what do you think? Because like I know Africa can learn a lot from the Western, from wherever, all the different continents. But what do you think Africa can teach the world through your experience? And then you're in the US, right? Newark? Yeah. How is your perspective of the, like the American lifestyle? How has it changed? Like I imagine you came with maybe a certain opinion, and throughout your experience you got to find out that, like these people are actually this or this or this. I'd just kind of like to know, like, what is the difference, like, and I know it might sound like a generalization in a way, but yeah.
Those are brutal questions. But they're killer questions. They're awesome. Can I think about it for like a year and then tell you? The one thing I will say, and I'll put myself in this category a little bit too, but it's something that I became keenly aware of throughout the year and even more so later on in the fellowship. Like, we all come in with our own sense of preconceived notions, right? And I'm sure I had them about Malawi or about Africa in general. And I think one thing in particular, because this fellowship is based around your employment and your work, is like there's this sense of how a workplace should be run, right? Like that things should happen in this way, that you're supposed to, a reporting structure or organization structure should look like this. People should show up and do X, Y, and Z. And what I've realized is that when things are drastically different than what you expect them to be, that doesn't mean that they're worse, right? And it doesn't mean that they're better. They're just different. And I think that was really eye-opening for me. Sometimes, like, there's so many other sub-contexts underneath everything, right, where you're like, why are people just not motivated to do this? Or why is this not happening? Or whatever it is. And there's so much more at play, and it can be like difficult to think about that your understanding is not the right understanding, right? Because you see something and you think it's going wrong and you think that you know how it should go. And I'm sure I've been guilty of that throughout the year, and I think that I see that a lot. And I think it'll play with you all year. And I feel like I've been taught so much by my colleagues, by my co-fellow. I could talk forever about it, but there's a lot of us. But I'll think about it more, and I'd love to share more in another time. But it's a tough question.
Yeah, I mean, like, we could talk for many hours and weeks about this topic. I think one of the things that I like to tell a lot of people in the U.S. who have never been to Africa before, and this is sort of come up repeatedly in the work that I do, that's like any type of cross-cultural work, where you're working, whether it's in Africa, or you're working with people in Asia, or you're working with people in Canada or Mexico. I mean, there are more things that people have in common than less. Like, there are certainly like pretty major, I think organizational things, I think, are probably the biggest difference in terms of like how people operate and work together as groups. I think that was probably one of the biggest differences that I totally agree, where it's like you can do things in a totally different way than we do them here, and it can still be successful. But like the individual motivations of people, it's the same. Like, it's just not that different in different places. And that was really like was a really powerful thing for me to learn.
I think for me, it's realizing that stereotypes exist and they don't exist. By that I mean, there are of course my own misconceptions that I had about the U.S. and coming here, you realize, well, people are very different. And in my opinion, there's really no American culture, because there's so many cultures represented in this country. There's so many people who have different viewpoints and values and different things. And I think for me, that was just being in a place where I began to learn all over again. That, you know, what I grew up thinking, oh, Hollywood, etc., isn't exactly what's actually on the ground. Even in Hollywood, you don't actually see that either at times. So it's really being in that place where you realize that, and you know, whether you like it or not, it's just going to hit you like a ton of bricks. A lot of the things that you thought were, this is how Americans do things, and you actually get to know people one-on-one and go to their homes and interact with them, you realize, sheesh, man, I have a lot of things I have to change in my mindset. And I think that probably is true across any place you go. But I think, you know, I could go and list 10 things for you, but I think if you want to talk one-on-one, we can chat some more. But yeah, it's definitely different.
Quickly, like, yeah, it could be 100 things. Two things I will say, though, that were, to me, amusingly how different they were is, one is, like, hospitality. Like, the sense of hosting someone in Africa, like, America could learn so much from that. And the other thing is, like, community, like what it really means to be a community. Like, if you say, I'm from here, this is my home village, this is my neighborhood, this is, like, what does that really mean, and what responsibilities do you have if that is your community? I think it's something that America could learn a lot from Africa about. But that's like the two on the list of a million.
So, I know you guys have a lot more questions, but that is why they're sticking around for the rest of the night, both for dinner, and then we'll be going out later on, and some of them will even be joining us tomorrow for the picnic in Central Park, and actually even more alums will be joining us tomorrow in New York in Central Park. So you'll have a lot of opportunities to talk to a lot of different people, but I did want to take a couple minutes to invite our other special guests up here. So Andrew and Ian and James and Sonya. Could you guys come up here, please? So, Andrew is one of our co-founders, and we're delighted for him to be here. And then Ian was well, why don't you guys introduce yourselves?
Sure. Yeah, you guys may have recognized me from the co-founder video. It's now going viral on the internet. But yeah, I'm Andrew Bentley. I grew up in the Midwest in Wisconsin, and I currently work and live in Boston, but I'm moving to New York City this year. I'm totally honored to be here. This is my favorite day of the year. Thanksgiving's a close second. But this is truly amazing. I can't wait to get to know all of you. Thank you so much for being here.
Nice. My name's Ian Mountjoy. I'm a first-year GHC fellow with Bertha and Andrew, or as we call him, just AP. I've stayed with Partners in Health since my first year, and continue to work at the Africa site, so I'll be getting to work very closely with some of you in Malawi and Rwanda. I'm really looking forward to that. We're around for the next day. We really want to chat with you all about our experience, so please do come up and ask us. Cheers.
Hello everyone, my name is Sonya. I'm a current GHC fellow with the City of Newark's Department of Child and Family Wellbeing with Ada. She's my co-fellow, and I'm just so honored to be here with all of you. These 2 weeks were some of the best 2 weeks of my life, so I'm just so happy for all of you that you're in the process of going through it.
Hey.
Oh, okay. After I'll be moving to Boston and doing my PhD in medical anthropology at Harvard.
Hey everyone, I'm James Arinaitwe. I'm from Uganda. I met some of my brothers and sisters over there. We've already chatted. I'm going through like the memory, reliving them as we were coming over here, because a year ago was us being initiated here, and it was incredible experience. I have to tell you, I'm Ugandan, but went to school here, but just connecting with my brothers and sisters from back home was just an incredible experience, in meeting all other people. And so some of them, I'm already working with them on some initiatives. I work with Single Step USA, which is an organization in New York City. We work on poverty issues in the US. Most of you who don't know, we have 10 million American kids who go hungry every single day. And most of you may not even know that. And so we work on issues from food to healthcare to education, name it. We work on that. My co-fellow has been incredible. I wouldn't even ask for anything better. I'm looking forward to work at least for another year or so, and I'm planning to go to law school. Right now I'm through interviews, some in Uganda, some here, but I'm working mostly looking for a paralegal job, and actually my final interview is next week on Monday, so I'm looking forward to that. So yeah.
We're very delighted that you guys are here. And so, like I said on the first day, to look around and know that these are people that you're going to know for the rest of your lives. Well, these people are too. I think they'd agree that they're more than just your community, but sort of your extended family. And so feel free to engage with them. Yeah, they're all really excited to talk to you.